Hello, everybody, and welcome to Narrative. We haven't heard that theme tune for a couple of years, but it's good to hear it again. It seems appropriate to bring it out today. There's a sense of the cavalry is back in town, and certainly some people might be going behind bars soon, including you, Steve Bannon. We'll have that story coming up. But of course, today was an auspicious day, D-Day, the 80th anniversary of American and European troops defeating the Germans in Normandy. It was a beautiful ceremony that they held in France today, and President Joe Biden was the keynote speaker. He was able to remind everyone of the heroism of our troops 80 years ago, but he also was able to underline the heroism needed now to safeguard our democracy as we enter the most consequential election in U.S. history this November. We'll play his full speech coming up a little later on. Also tonight, we're very excited to announce the launch of our new website, Narativ.org. Now, of course, the website has been around for a very long time, but we haven't updated it for almost 8 years. Now, in partnership with Beehive, we are launching a brand new platform, which will serve as a comprehensive hub for democracy news as we head towards the elections in November. We want to keep you informed and we want to stay connected with you directly. And that's why we've launched this new website. If you go there right now, you'll see there's a white bar right there in the middle of the page, which looks for your email and then a blue subscribe button. That'll get you access to a lot of free content. Plus, it'll get you access to some paid premium content, which will require an $8 a month subscription if you want to get access to. But there's plenty of free stuff on the website too. So it's certainly not only about paid content. And because we're launching something brand new today, 10 people who enter their names into that white bar and hit subscribe, well, guess what? You might get your entire subscription for free for life on Narativ.org. That's pretty amazing. So do it right now. Make sure you're ahead of everybody else. Sign up to Narativ.org and just enter your email address. Steve Bannon, former advisor to President Donald Trump, has been ordered to report to prison by July 1, 2024 to serve a 4-month sentence for contempt of Congress. And if you do the math, that sort of puts him in prison for the bulk of the campaign, which is, you know, not a bad thing for those of us hoping he would just go away. This is about as close as we can get to him going away. This particular sentence follows his refusal to comply with a subpoena from the House Select Committee investigating the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack. Bannon was found guilty in July of 2022 and fined $6,500 for failing to appear before the committee, failing to provide a lot of information that the committee was seeking. And despite his appeals, the federal court has upheld his conviction, leading to the enforcement of his sentence today. Bannon remains defiant, claiming his prosecution is politically motivated and vowing to continue his legal fight, yada, yada, yada. His imprisonment comes amid the 2024 campaign, of course, where we just saw Donald Trump, his longtime ally, also being convicted and may soon be facing prison. Now, let me be clear about this because I've said it so many times. I'm willing to say it one more time. Steve Bannon is most likely a spy for the Chinese government. So the reason why he may have refused to appear before the January 6th committee may have a lot to do with the fact that he had certain information maybe related to how foreign governments might have been involved in January the 6th. And that may have been the reason why he chose to go behind bars, as he's now about to spend 4 months behind bars, than actually cough up all the evidence that they were asking for. And we know that not just because I am saying it, although I've said it many times and I'm probably one of the few people to say it out loud. There's plenty of suggestion from the committee itself, if you'll recall.
And just a few days before the election, Steve Bannon, a former Trump chief White House strategist and outside advisor to President Trump, spoke to a group of his associates from China and said this.
And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's going to declare victory. But that doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner. The Democrats, more of our people vote early that count. Theirs voted mail. And so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. Also, if Trump is losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be even crazier. No, because he's going to sit right there and say they stole it. I'm directing the Attorney General to shut down all ballot places in all 50 states. No, he's not going out easy. If Biden's winning, Trump is going to do some crazy shit.
As you know, Mr. Bannon refused to testify in our investigation. He's been convicted of criminal contempt of Congress, and he's awaiting sentencing. But the evidence indicates that Mr. Bannon had advanced knowledge of Mr. Trump's intent to declare victory falsely on election night, but also that Mr. Bannon knew about Mr. Trump's planning for January 6th.
That doesn't leave much to the imagination. It certainly sounds like he knew that Trump was going to start some crazy shit if he didn't win. And Trump did cause some crazy shit. But the interesting thing there, of course, was that the committee itself pointing out that just days before January the 6th, what was Mr. Bannon doing? Well, he was briefing his Asian associates. While I have you here, I can't resist this question. So who wears it best and who did this shot better? Is it Donald Trump on the left or Steve Bannon on the right? Weeks apart, both seeing justice delivered to them. Of course, on the left, Donald Trump convicted of falsifying business documents. But in reality, what he's convicted there is interfering and illegally winning the 2016 election by cheating, by illegally paying off Stormy Daniels $130,000, which was an illegal campaign contribution and which he landed up cheating to win. What Mr. Bannon is accused of there and is now going to be sentenced for is failing to cough up enough evidence because of his absolute guilt in involvement in January the 6th in the insurrection, which involved stealing the 2020 campaign. So you see what's going on here. We've got the 2016 campaign stolen by Donald Trump. He won. He ended up going to be in power for 4 years. And in 2020, they tried to steal it again. And this time it involved Steve Bannon. And guess what? He's going to jail now for that. And there's more to come. Mr. Bannon has some other criminal cases he has to deal with. Bannon faces state charges related to the We Build the Wall fundraising campaign in New York State. That trial is set for later in 2024. And of course, because it's a New York State trial, there's no pardoning him for that, as Donald Trump previously did towards the end of his term in office. In other news, the Department of Justice is investigating potential illegal collusion among large corporate landlords, facilitated by RealPage. That's a software platform used to set rental prices. This is an investigation which is part of a broader probe into whether RealPage's algorithm allows landlords to share private data and coordinate in setting higher rental prices, which could be contributing to the significant rise in rents across the country. But particularly, this is really interesting, in battleground states, in swing states. It looks like a lot of the landlords that have been colluding on this RealPage site, setting and price fixing the prices of rents way above what they were in the past, up to 20%, 30% increases sometimes in rent. Well, it turns out that a lot of these properties are in swing states. RealPage's software allegedly uses private data from landlords to set rental prices, potentially leading to price fixing and higher rents than the market would typically allow. Now, the practice is particularly prevalent in key swing states, which could have significant political implications for the 2024 elections. As you know, everyone is so upset about inflation. Well, what is more impactful on inflation and the cost of living than the actual cost of renting? Cities like Atlanta, Phoenix, Miami, Charlotte, and Houston have seen substantial rent increases, with Atlanta experiencing a 56% increase since 2016. So it certainly looks to me like the criminal activity that has been going on across the country involving this website, involving a lot of these landlords which have been using this website to set their prices. Well, it's been collusion, it's price fixing, it's the kind of stuff you get to see out of the mafia, organized criminal activity, if you want. And it seems to be happening a lot in swing states. And of course, the implication for the 2024 election is this: the rising cost of living, driven in part by increasing rental prices, is a significant concern for voters, especially in battleground states. The DOJ's investigation into potential price fixing could become a major narrative in the upcoming election. Of course, this is not the only place it's appearing. We're also seeing the price gouging happening in grocery prices, and that too may be connected to, guess what, politics in the swing states. So keep an eye out on this story. It's not going away. And we return now to President Joe Biden's poignant address in Normandy, France, commemorating the 80th anniversary of D-Day. His speech honored the bravery and sacrifices of World War II veterans while drawing parallels to contemporary challenges facing democracy. Biden emphasized the importance of alliances and the need to stand firm against autocratic threats, particularly highlighting the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the necessity of supporting Kyiv against Russian aggression.
The hour had nearly come. Monday, June 5th, 1944. The evil Third Reich was devastating the world. Nazi Germany had subjugated the once free nations of Europe through brute force, lies, and twisted ideology of racial superiority. Millions of Jews murdered in the Holocaust. Millions of others killed by bombs, bullets, bloody warfare. Hitler and those with him thought democracies were weak, that the future belonged to dictators. Here, on the coast of Normandy, the battle between freedom and tyranny would be joined. Here, on that June morning, the testing was at hand. President Macron, Mrs. Macron, Secretary Austin, Secretary Blinken, distinguished guests, most of all, our honored veterans who met that test at the ages, a test of ages to that moment, 80 years ago. 80 years ago today. On behalf of the American people, and as Commander-in-Chief, it's the highest honor to be able to salute you here in Normandy once more. All of you, God love you. Winston Churchill called what happened here, quote, the greatest, most complicated operation ever, end of quote. After years of planning, Operation Overlord was ready to launch just as soon as the weather turned. Across the choppy English Channel, the Supreme Commander of the Allies, Dwight D. Eisenhower, waited. The largest force ever of its kind, built by 12 nations. Men, guns, planes, naval craft of every description waited. The world, captive and free, waited. Finally, Eisenhower's forecaster said there was a window in the weather. It would open briefly on Tuesday, the 6th of June. The general weighed the options and gave the order. At dawn, the Allies would strike. The great crusade to free Europe from tyranny would begin. That night, General Eisenhower drove to the English town of Newbury to visit paratroopers of the 101st Airborne. There were men from all over America. It was estimated that 80% of them would be killed within hours. That was the estimate. But they were brave, they were resolute, and they were ready. One soldier told General Eisenhower, quote, don't worry, sir. The 101st is on the job. Everything will be taken care of. That's what he said. And because of their courage and their resolve, because the courage and resolve of their allies, it was taken care of. From the sea and sky, nearly 160,000 Allied troops descended on Normandy. Many, to state the obvious, never came home. Many survived that longest day, kept on fighting for months until victory was finally won. And a few, a notable band of brothers, are here with us today. Kenneth Blaine Smith is here. On that day, under heavy artillery fire, he operated a rangefinder and radar on the first American ship to arrive at Normandy's coast, providing direct gunfire support for the Rangers scaling the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc on their daring mission to take out the German batteries. Bob Gibson is here. He landed on Utah Beach about 10 hours after the invasion began. Bullets flying everywhere, tracers lighting up the sky. Bob drove an M4 tractor with anti-aircraft gun mounted on top, providing critical protection for the infantry against the German Air Force. On that day, and for many days after, he continued. Ben Miller is here, a medic with the 82nd Airborne. At 3 a.m. on June 6th, he and 13 other medics flew over the channel in a rickety glider. Its wings were ripped off by giant poles that the Germans buried halfway in the ground to stop them from landing. They crashed, but they survived. And they did their duty, dragging injured soldiers to safety, treating wounds, saving lives while the battle raged. Every soldier who stormed the beach, who dropped by parachute or landed by glider, every sailor who manned the thousands of ships and landing craft, every aviator who destroyed German-controlled airfields, bridges, and railroads, all were backed by other brave Americans, including hundreds of thousands of people of color and women who courageously served despite unjust limitations on what they could do for their nation. Lewis Brown is here, part of the Red Ball Express, a truck convoy made up of mostly African-American drivers. They landed in Normandy in the wake of D-Day. They rushed supplies to the rapidly advancing front lines. Woody Woodhouse is here, members of the legendary Tuskegee Airmen, who flew over 15,000 sorties during the war. Marjorie Stone is here. She enlisted in the women's branch of the Naval Reserve, became an aircraft mechanic, spent the war keeping American planes and pilots in the air. Theirs has always been the story of America. Just walk the rows of this cemetery as I have. Nearly 10,000 heroes buried side by side, officers and enlisted, immigrants and native-born, different races, different faiths, but all Americans. All served with honor when America and the world needed them most. Millions back home did their part as well. From coast to coast, Americans found countless ways to pitch in. They understood our democracy is only as strong as all of us make it together. The men who fought here became heroes, not because they were the strongest or toughest or most fiercest, although they were, but because they were given an audacious mission, knowing, every one of them knew, the probability of dying was real. But they did it anyway. They knew, beyond any doubt, there are things that are worth fighting and dying for. Freedom is worth it. Democracy is worth it. America is worth it. The world is worth it. Then, now, and always. The war in Europe didn't end for another 11 months. But here, the tide turned in our favor. Here, we proved the forces of liberty are stronger than the forces of conquest. Here, we proved that the ideals of our democracy are stronger than any army or combination of armies in the entire world. We proved something else here as well, the unbreakable unity of the Allies. Here with us are men who served alongside the Americans that day, wearing different flags on their arms, but fighting with the same courage for the same purpose. What the Allies did together 80 years ago far surpassed anything we could have done on our own. It was a powerful illustration of how alliances, real alliances, make us stronger. A lesson that I pray we Americans never forget. Together we won the war. We rebuilt Europe, including our former enemies. It was an investment in what became shared and a prosperous future. We established NATO, the greatest military alliance in the history of the world. And over time, you got it, it is. And over time, we brought more nations into NATO. the NATO alliance, including the newest members, Finland and Sweden. Today, NATO stands at 32 countries strong, and NATO is more united than ever, and even more prepared to keep the peace, deter aggression, defend freedom all around the world. America has invested in our alliances and forged new ones, not simply out of altruism, but out of our own self-interest as well. America's unique ability to bring countries together is an undeniable source of our strength and our power. Isolationism was not the answer 80 years ago and is not the answer today. We know the dark forces that these heroes fought against 80 years ago. They never fade. Aggression and greed, the desire to dominate and control, to change borders by force, these are perennial. The struggle between a dictatorship and freedom is unending. Here in Europe, we see one stark example. Ukraine has been invaded by a tyrant bent on domination. Ukrainians are fighting with extraordinary courage, suffering great losses, but never backing down. They've been inflicted on the Russian aggressors. They've suffered tremendous losses in Russia. The numbers are staggering. 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded. Nearly 1 million people have left Russia because they can no longer see a future in Russia. The United States and NATO and a coalition of more than 50 countries standing strong with Ukraine. We will not walk away. Because if we do, Ukraine will be subjugated, and it will not end there. Ukraine's neighbors will be threatened. All of Europe will be threatened. And make no mistake, the autocrats of the world are watching closely to see what happens in Ukraine, to see if we let this illegal aggression go unchecked. We cannot let that happen. To surrender to bullies, to bow down to dictators, is simply unthinkable. Were we to do that, it means we'd be forgetting what happened here in these hallowed beaches. Make no mistake, we will not bow down. We will not forget. Let me end with this. History tells us freedom is not free. If you want to know the price of freedom, come here to Normandy. Come to Normandy and look. Go to the other cemeteries in Europe where our fallen heroes rest. Go back home to Arlington Cemetery. Tomorrow, I will pay respects at Pointe du Hoc. Go there as well and remember, the price of unchecked tyranny is the blood of the young and the brave. In their generation, in their hour of trial, the Allied forces of D-Day did their duty. Now the question for us is, in our hour of trial, will we do ours? We're living in a time when democracy is more at risk across the world than any point since the end of World War II, since these beaches were stormed in 1944. Now we have to ask ourselves, will we stand against tyranny, against evil, against crushing brutality of the iron fist? Will we stand for freedom? Will we defend democracy? Will we stand together? My answer is yes, and only can be yes. We're not far off from the time when the last living voices of those who fought and bled on D-Day will no longer be with us. So we have a special obligation. We cannot let what happened here be lost in the silence of the years to come. We must remember it, must honor it, and live it. And we must remember the fact that they were heroes here that day does not absolve us from what we have to do today. Democracy is never guaranteed. Every generation must preserve it, defend it, and fight for it. That's the test of the ages. In memory of those who fought here, died here, literally saved the world here, let us be worthy of their sacrifice. Let us be the generation that when history is written about our time, in 10, 20, 30, 50, 80 years from now, it'll be said, when the moment came, we met the moment. We stood strong. Our alliances were made stronger. We saved democracy in our time as well. Thank you very much, and may God bless you all. May God protect our troops. Thank you.
Absolutely stirring stuff from Joe Biden today. Thank you for tuning in to Narrative. We'll be back every week with an update on everything that's going on related to democracy as we head into the 2024 election. Don't forget to sign up at narrative.org, Narativ.org. That's it for the show. Have a good night, everybody.
One day, you'll tell the story of autocrats, crooks, and kings who came for our freedom. A story of citizens who stood up to tyranny and won. The people prevailed and renewed an old vow to a more perfect union. And that was just the beginning. The story continues. Narrative, where truth lives.